So I'm back again to talk about solo role-playing with tabletop RPGs. I just want to say before I get into it, I'm really happy that my previous video got quite a lot of engagement. I think a lot of discussion came out of it, which is always really nice to see. And it just sort of, it shows me that people are interested, in the topics that I'm discussing, especially that with this series, it's a little bit different than the videos I've done before, because I'm literally just sitting down in front of a microphone and hitting record with no idea what I'm going to talk about, and just sort of seeing what comes up based on, what I've kind of been doing over the past sort of, 2 or 3 weeks in terms of solo role playing throughout my, the different campaigns I do and little experiments I do and things like that. So that leads me on to the first train of thought or brainstorm, whatever you want to call it. I've been doing an experiment quite recently that I think, is a good topic to discuss. And it's been with the Mythic GM Emulator. I suppose, a lot of people who have played solo RPGs before will be really familiar with this book. It basically, for those who aren't, it provides a system of DMless or GMless play, and the system itself is a kind of oracle where you ask questions as though you would ask questions of a games master, referee, DM, whatever you want to call it, and it will give you answers back based on a table of random word associations. So you get 2 words, so you might generate something like, I don't know, perceive water or something like that, and you've got to figure out in the context of what's happening in the scene of the game what that means. So there is some interpretation necessary. So I want to get into that a little bit. So basically, I'm going to talk about oracle systems as a whole, and how they fit into solo role playing. So when I first got into solo role playing, and I used to sort of trowel the internet reading blogs and things like that, trying to find rule systems that I could use, one of the earliest things I came across that I found quite impressive was the Mythic GM Emulator. And I thought, I can't wait to try it, I'm excited. And the first hurdle I came across was trying to interpret the rolls I was making on the random table. That's the core of it. So one side of it is the oracle and the word associations and asking questions of the GM or the oracle, and the other side of it is basically a system for keeping track of NPCs and story threads, which we'll get into in a few minutes, but we're going to concentrate on the oracle side of it. And the first hurdle I came across was how to interpret those random word associations and make sense of them. And I think this is one of the challenges of solo role-playing is, I kind of briefly covered it in the last video, you got to sharpen your imagination and your creative skills. However, this leaves a huge gap in the market, so to speak, because if you're not good at interpreting things on the spot, it can be very frustrating and it can make you give up straight away. And this was one of the challenges that I found with trying to use the Mythic GM Emulator. I'm not panning it, it's an absolutely brilliant set of rules. It's a really good tool to use. But I think it has a place amongst other things rather than it being kind of, the exclusive tool for role-playing. I think that for those people that have trouble interpreting, a couple of random words, it can be difficult, and it kind of doesn't really make it any more powerful than using story cubes or something like that, in my opinion. So, you know, what else is out there? What else is out there? To answer that, I'm going to talk about my personal approach to solo role-playing with Dungeons and Dragons. There doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons. You can use any system. It's whichever system you want. But I'd say the first port of call when trying to play your particular desirable rule system solo is to dive into the actual rules that are there and take that robustness that's supplied in those rules and use that to cover as many solo role-playing situations as possible. And during that process, it's a good idea to take some, you know, whether it's random rules or tables, and write them down and adapt them for solo play, and build these things into, you know, like maybe a notebook or a computer file or something like that, or just print them all out and put them in a folder. But I think that before you consult an Oracle system, you want to be using robust rules that already exist within the system you want to play, or borrowed from a system that can be used in a neutral manner. And that is basically just to prevent situations where you're just relying on having to interpret two words. So basically what I'm trying to say is Oracle systems, I think, have their place, but I feel like they're for situations where you have genuine questions and you don't know how to answer them with the rules that you've got. And as you read other rule systems and collect rules, develop your own set of rules, which I cover extensively in my tutorial series for BECMI or BECMI D&D, so it's worth checking that out. But, like, you know, build all those things up, and then the Oracle system is something that you can use to complement that in situations where you're kind of at a loss. And I think that you don't have to take this approach. If you're comfortable just using something like the Mythic Emulator, then that's fine. This is aimed at people that are struggling to interpret those results. I would say that a way to handle that is to take robust rules from the system you're using, or borrow from other systems, or create your own, and, you know, build and adapt them. You know, one thing I do, I come across a situation I've never handled before. I check through all my role-playing game books. I try and find something that will suitably help me determine the outcome of whatever it is that I'm kind of stuck on. And then I'll take, you know, whether it's a rule or a table, and I'll write it into my notepad, and I'll develop that later into my my own rules. And over time, these things adapt until I have this big kind of hefty rule book of my own that, you know, can handle a lot more situations. And over time, you kind of adapt it, you craft it, you make it better. And I do have an Oracle system built into that as well, which isn't Mythic, but it was originally based on it. But yeah, so, you know, that leads into developing an Oracle system of your own, which can easily be done. So I've been experimenting recently. I've been playing a game on my blog using the Mythic GM Emulator, just to sort of try it out and see if I can sort of adapt it in some way to make it better for my own purposes. But I've also been using a Oracle system of my own. So I want to talk about that as well. Like, you can make an Oracle system of your own. It's quite simple, because basically all you're doing is you're asking questions, and you need a way to determine what the answer is to that question. And a lot of the time, these questions will be yes or no. So what I've been experimenting is the use of tarot cards. for, divination. I think, people use divination to tell people's fortunes, and that's not much different than using the Mythic Oracle system. So I kind of came up with a simple concept where I've got a set of tarot cards and I've got an 8-sided die. The 8-sided die is for yes and no questions. I don't have a chaos factor like Mythic does, so basically it's always chaotic because there's an equal chance on the 8-sided die of getting one of the following results. So I've got eight results on a table. I've got yes and no. I've got like a strong yes and a strong no. And I've got a kind of yes with an unexpected event, no with an unexpected event. And I've got a bunch of other things as well off the top of my head. I can't remember. I know I've got 8 results, but yeah, I've got yes reinforced. So I've got yes reinforced, yes with unexpected event. I got no reinforced, and no with unexpected event. I think that's D6. And I think I've got a couple of other things as well, which I've got yes diminished and no diminished as well. So that's 8 results altogether. And there's an equal chance of getting any of those results. So it doesn't matter how likely you think a yes or no answer is going to be to a particular question. It will always be chaotic, you will always get a high chance of having a result that you didn't expect. So it kind of negates the whole chaos factor thing, and I think that works pretty well. But you could easily introduce a chaos factor where you get a bonus or a penalty to the roll. And then with the tarot cards, it's just you ask complex questions. You draw a tarot card from a shuffled deck, and you use that tarot card to answer the question. So it's not sort of like 2 random words. It's a little bit more than that. And I guess the fun in that is you'll learn how to use tarot cards and read tarot cards, which is a great amount of fun if you're into kind of like occult stuff. And I know, if you've been into D&D for a long time, you'll probably recall that a lot of occult stuff kind of got mixed in with the whole D&D thing and the whole devil worshipping thing, and it got a bad rep in the 80s basically for being played by devil worshippers and occultists, and that people were up to all kinds of strange rituals that play D&D. So it kind of it feeds into that, which kind of gives it a sort of extra level in a way, which I think is pretty fun. And it also makes the world seem almost like it's coming alive by the use of divination, and it gives it that like extra level of almost like realism and spirituality and occultism, and it makes it more like esoteric, which I think is really cool. So I've been experimenting with that, and it works really well. And it can be used on its own, for a very basic form of solo role-playing. You can just get a set of tarot cards and an 8-sided die, and grab a rulebook of whichever system you want to use, and just go at it. And I think that works really well. I'd love to hear, what in the comments or whatever, do you use an oracle system to play solo? What is it? If you do, have you developed your own? Let me know what you think. So again, I kept the last video to a chat of sort of been between 10 and 15 minutes. So I'm going to do the same with this. So I've been talking for just over 14 minutes now. So I'm going to leave it there, and that is going to be the discussion of the day, basically. Not of the day, because I'm not going to do these daily, but I will be doing these periodically. My plan is to try and get a video out once every 3 weeks, but I'm not going to tie myself into that. You probably know that I'm not what you would call a consistent content creator. And I see no reason to be, for the most part. You know, like, I think a lot of people out there kind of doing the thing, they're working really hard, they're trying to be consistent. And for my own, you know, a sense of well-being, I try not to do that too much unless I feel it is achievable for me. But I'm experimenting with the idea of getting a video out once every 3 weeks. So I'll be scheduling them, and that's why I'm going to be doing these types of videos as well, because it just it keeps the ball rolling, because it does take me a long time to make videos for my campaign, as you can probably tell, because I've got to put out all kinds of ambience and sound effects into the recording. But yeah, so hopefully, you know, you'll see a video every 3 weeks. And hopefully this particular video was to your satisfaction and you found some value in it. If you did, please give it a like to let me know. As I've said, you know, many times before, it's extremely helpful. I can't stress enough how helpful it is when you engage with the content by giving it a like and leaving a comment. It lets me know that I'm doing a good job, and it lets the YouTube algorithm know that the videos are engaging, and that helps the channel to grow. And as the channel grows, it gives me more opportunities to do more, because it keeps me in a positive mindset about it. I feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile, and it just, you know, during those times where it just feels a little bit more difficult than others, I'm able to say I'm gonna do it because, you know, people are liking what I'm doing. So please do that. Also, I have Twitter if you want to follow me on there. That's @CrawlerSolo. It'd be great to see you on there. You know, I do kind of post updates on there about things that I'm up to in my campaigns, and I post up when I've made a new video or when I've written a new article for my blog. That brings me around to that. My blog is solodungeoncrawler.blogspot.com. So have a look at that, because I constantly, well, I won't say constantly, but from time to time, I post articles up on there about old school D&D, solo role playing, little experiments with solo campaigns and things like that. So please do check that out. And that's it. I've done my spot of PR there. So I'm going to leave the video there, and I will see you in the next session. Goodbye.